Delmarva Today with Don Rush.
The COVID-19 pandemic has shined a spotlight on homelessness, with many losing jobs and homes, forcing them to seek shelter elsewhere. Welcome back to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. Amidst the pandemic in 2020, nearly 600,000 were found to be homeless as the nation began to shut down. In response, the Biden administration has pushed through billions of dollars to help those who face the devastating effects of the pandemic. But as we end the year 2022, there has been an upsurge in the number of those seeking shelter as government assistance programs begin to expire. And our studio this morning is Celeste Savage, she's CEO and Executive Director of Hope and Life Outreach Ministries, which provides assistance for the homeless. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me here, Don.
So I understand that you have a 22% jump in the number of people seeking shelter and help. What's going on there?
It has just been unbelievable to see the increase. I think you've kind of nailed it at the beginning here with now the money is not there. They're being evicted from their homes, and we're just seeing the increase. That's part of the increase that's taking place at Halo.
Why is it? What's going on here?
Well, I think, that there's the funding is not there, the jobs, whether there's jobs out there, the qualifications for the jobs. And, we do deal with a lot of mental health. So put all the factors together and you're going to see that kind of an increase.
So in terms of donations and help, what kind of help are you getting? And have you seen any increase, or what's going on? Because this has got to obviously put a pretty big strain on your operation. Yeah,
it has. Fortunately, we've been able to put the message out, through different media settings, and we have an amazing community. So, they've stepped up greatly. Obviously, with a 22% increase in that short period of time, the expenses are there, the operation cost and all that's involved. We're completely full in the shelter. So, and our meals, I thought we would be hitting 90. I think we're actually going to be pretty close to 100,000 meals distributed this year. So, it's and the community's donating. They're helping, but we're not finished yet.
Is there some government help as well, or is it strictly?
Yeah, we stay pretty much strictly with donations from individuals, foundations, and that sort of thing.
Now, I also understand that not only your shelter, but like, for instance, Christian shelters also experiencing the same thing. So you get a sense that this is something that's area wide. That's not just your shelter getting the hit, as it were. Well,
sadly, it's just not our area. It's across the country. We're part of a rescue mission network, and this is what we're reading constantly from all across the United States. It's the funding has ended, and now the people have no place to go. So we're getting hit.
So what kind of people are you now seeing? And has it changed from, say, what you saw before, or what sense do you get about that?
We're seeing a lot more mental health coming through, a lot more families. We just continuously have our family section filled. Again, that's where I feel part of that losing the rental or the house is really the cause for that. We're seeing a lot more younger population, perhaps I'm going to say between the 25-30 age bracket, and it's starting to really show.
Why is it that you think you're seeing that? And I mean, is there an example of that?
Well, just so we had a mother actually that came in, just had a baby, only a couple days old, I guess, from the hospital. It's and she's young. She's only 28. The problem is the father of the child is imprisoned. So working, losing the job because of the pregnancy, losing the home because there's no income coming in because of the funding's not there anymore. So that's an example.
So one of the things I was reading was that something like 29% of homeless families are headed by a working adult, usually the mother. Some 50% of homeless mothers don't have a high school diploma, for example, or 63% of homeless women have been victims of domestic violence. How do you deal with those kinds of problems that you are having to deal with as they at least seek temporary shelter.
Right. Well, I think for us, we have case management that goes on immediately when they come through the door. We have guest advancement summaries that we work on because they're allowed to stay in the shelter for a 90-day period. So when they come in, we find out where the problem is, what the need is, and then, like for instance, I believe we had like 4 of our guests now are taking GED classes. We do have working individuals, which we're part of that number as far as the mothers being the working parent, and then we work with the agencies locally to try to get the housing vouchers and try to get them reconnected back into society with it.
So what kind of impact then does, say, homelessness have, particularly for women and women with children, as you indicated a moment ago? Any examples of that? I mean, is particularly older, you might have a mother who's got a couple of children, but they're like maybe 5 or 6 years old. That's a tough one.
Yeah, that is. And we do have, we run from baby, which, like I said, just a couple days ago out of the hospital, to we have one that's in there that's at 14 years old. That's our oldest at this point. It's a very difficult piece because if the mother's working, there's the who's going to be babysitting, how can we get them connected, and obviously transportation. There's a lot of different problems going on. I shouldn't, I guess, call it problems. I should call it more challenges. Mm-hmm. And, we're ready to face it. We just have to make the moves to make it work.
So in terms of your own story, you were a founder of Halo. And as I read, you got this inspiration by seeing someone, or at least some kind of a backpack or something on the roads. Tell me about that moment.
Okay. Well, one of the biggest things was I was going through a lot in my life, and I was driving a school bus and made a turn, and there sat a bidroll on the side of the road. And, it hit me so hard to realize it could be me, because I used to be one of those individuals that said, get a job. And so I just made it my mission to find the person that owned the bidroll, and I did. And from that point forward, Halo was developed.
So what was he like?
He had been a construction worker, worked for the city, not this city, but worked for the city, constructions. And he was up on the billboard area, and mm-hmm. he fell. He was coming down the ladder, and he fell, and he hurt his back, and he couldn't work. He couldn't do things. And of course, he was an older gentleman at that point, so he was just on the street. And I met him long about 1 o'clock in the morning, actually. He never came back to the bidroll until about 1 in the morning. So
what were you doing at 1
looking for him. Yeah. I made up my mind I was going to find who that person was that owned that bidroll. So I would go by that same location. And then finally, the one night, it was over on Broad Street. We were walking, or he was walking across Broad Street, and I saw him. I pulled up to him, didn't know who he was. Pulled up to him, and I guess it's kind of funny, a strange woman talking, but do you own this bidroll? And he kind of looked at me because trust is not always there. And he goes, yes, why? I just wanted to meet you. And from there on, it was, I heard his story, and he came to, at that time I had opened a shelter in the church, and he came to the shelter. And from there on out, he ended up getting into a place and getting leveled off. So,
what was he like as a personality? I mean, a lot of us grow up in the idea that yes, we're going to make it, and we just always have to work hard and that kind of thing. Obviously, these things happen. Where, in his case, he was injured. How did he adjust to that idea that he had been so devastated by this single incident? I mean, one that he couldn't necessarily foresee.
I think that's a unique perspective. Because he was frustrated. After a while, you try and you try, you just can't do the job. And he couldn't get a job. And so a lot of times they just give up. I mean, I know with a lot of our older, more chronic homeless, they just have given up. And it's trying to rebuild that hope back into them, renewing their mind, so to speak, to realize, hey, I am worth something. I can do something,
How hard is that to instill in someone?
It's very, very challenging because they've been, especially for those that have been on the street for a long time, to have them be able to see their self-worth and that they have value. And but you just keep loving on them and plugging with them and hope that they change and turn around.
Because one of the things that struck me, and I've been told, is that if you're on the street long enough, everything begins to dim. That is to say, whether it's your outlook, whether it's just simply being mentally acute, in terms of the abilities to work your mind, as it were. I mean, it all kind of pressures down on you. I mean, is that the experience you see?
Yeah, I think what happens in what I've seen with it is, after you've been on the street, you kind of, hope is so important. And once you begin to lose that, I love the way you termed it as it dims, a lot of times then substance abuse begins to take over because you're just trying to numb this feeling. Here you were, out there doing work and having success, and then just one slip of the foot, and now you're carrying a bidroll. And he was on the streets for a while, and that the gentleman we were talking about, and it's kind of bad because when they begin to get to that point, it just takes a lot of effort. I know one gentleman that I worked with, he just refused to come inside. He said, "What for? Why do I want to take up somebody's bed when I know that I'm not worth that?" And to ever get them to change their mind, you just have to really work on it.
I ran across a quote, I think it's Angel Simpson. One of you folks said that if we can help one person realize their worth, especially women, we want them to know that someone loves them. How important is that concept of love in terms of getting these people through a hard time?
Yeah. Angel does a great job with that at Halo. And the loving piece is actually the drawing card. You can provide the meals, so vitally important. You can provide the shelter, but they are homeless people, especially those that are at the brink of losing hope. When they feel, somebody that hug, they may not have had a hug forever, or I shouldn't say forever, but for a very long time. And they've gone through a lot of complications and problems. It's to give them that hug and look them right straight in the eyes and say, "You know what, you're loved. I love you." They're not used to that. So it's a drawing card. It's something that happens inside. They go, "Man, this person really does care about me." Then you can begin to work with them. And if we can, as she said, if we can just help one, that's our goal is more, obviously.
Right.
But, if we can just help one, that makes it all worthwhile. I think about a person that she now has her own place and all that, but she was on the street. And I knew her name. I learned her name. I called her by her name. And I refused to call her by her street name. I called her by her given name and loved on her. And then when she came into the shelter, it was like her whole life made a transformation. And now, like I said, she got her job, she got a car, she got a place to live. And then that's when, if you can just reach one, then they can touch out because they've been on the street. So what better person to talk about it than someone that's experienced, say, "Hey, it's for real. You are worth something." I didn't think I was, but I found out I really am worth something.
Because I would think that life on the street like that is really sort of a life of rejection. Because, many of us will walk by someone who may be homeless or what have you. They may be asking for something. You might give something. But in general, it must be a fairly lonely thing to be sitting there even asking for assistance out on the street, that there's a rejection sense, that people they want to be near you.
Yeah. I think the concept of a homeless person is probably not accurate. A lot of times people look at homeless people and say, like I did, go get a job, or, they smell, or, just kind of staying away. But they're just like you and I. And the thing is that if we realize that and look at it, and they're God's creation, they're His, and if we can love on them and talk to them just like you and I are talking, you're going to find out that they're for real people, and they just need to have people that are for real with them. It's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, I think you indicated a moment ago that some of the people who have come through your shelter and have finally been able to get a job and so on, Do some of them come back and talk to the other people who are inside the shelter? I mean, we see an example of that.
Well, yeah, I have one that has just happened. It is so amazing, Don. It thrills my heart, actually, and that we have a young lady that is an intern through SU, and the neat part about it was she was in our shelter when she was I guess she was probably about 13, and she stayed in the shelter with us for a while. And she has now come on as my women's shelter coordinator. And I said to her, I called her by name, and I said, did you ever think that when you came in to talk about an internship that you were going to end up with a job? And her comment was this, yes. And I just looked at her, she said, I want to help people. I love what Halo did for me and my family. I wanted to be here. And I thought, wow, what an amazing, testimony, so to speak, And it's kind of like there's an example of loving on people. And here's a young child that was, to me, impressionable, that didn't give up. I'd like to think that we gave a little bit of hope even to her, for her to be able to have her degree in social work and come back and give to Halo. So yes, they do come back. The same person I talked about earlier, volunteered, and it's kind of neat to see that when that happens.
Now it's getting cold. What is it like for someone who's homeless, who, say, for instance, might not be able to get into your shelter? What is that experience like? I mean, I cannot imagine. Particularly, we were just out just a moment ago in the parking lot. It was very cold, and I had a jacket on, heavy jacket on. What is it like? And what does that do to people when it gets this cold?
A lot of times, there's a lot of bad decisions that are made when that happens. Tonight, I'm really concerned because the temperature's really supposed to go down. For those that aren't able to get into the shelter, and just about all the shelters around here are full. If not, they are full. But obviously we have the blankets and all of that we can give them. But a lot of times they make decisions. When they go in their tents and stuff, they have the little kerosene heater. And I think back to a gentleman that, I would always go out and check on his kerosene heater. He kicked it with his foot because he was cold. And this was actually 2 years ago that this took place, but it's just the reality of this is what goes on. So they have the kerosene heater going in their tent, and it caught on fire and burnt his foot really bad. Thank the Lord he came in for at least a little while. But, that's the part that's very scary for me is I have been out on the street and identified bodies. And it's kind of, I just don't want that to happen. So we do everything we can at Halo to, when it gets bitter cold, open up. We'll be doing that tonight if we can get cots and try to put them in cots. But it's a dangerous ballgame. And then the next move, obviously, is, like I have said earlier, they tend to begin to go to substance, which is usually the alcohol. You get so much alcohol in you, you don't know what's going on around you. You actually can freeze to death. So it's scary when it gets like this.
One of the things that somebody said to me, I don't know if it's true or not, but in drinking alcohol, particularly anything that's higher proof, that at least temporarily there's this warmth that it creates in your own body. Right. There's an illusion, as it were. And
that's what happens to them. They drink it because they think they're getting warm, and it does have that feel going through from what they've said. But then they get so much in them that they don't even realize what's going on. And that's when, being out in this cold, it's going to be 21 degrees. Being out in the cold is, they just don't realize it. And then they end up dying or, frostbite or whatever.
Have we had many of those over the years? I mean, I've seen reports where from time to time there will be someone who was homeless apparently and their body was found. Is that something that is going on here in terms of any great numbers?
I don't feel that it is as bad as it used to be when we first started, and mainly because there's so many that now realizes that part of it. I mean, the city certainly has a great team that goes out and checks on the homeless that are in the encampments. And I think it's a team effort all the way around. All of us kind of trying to work together. They make a phone call. Hey, do you have a cot that we can? That sort of thing. So everybody working together. I think we've seen those numbers decrease a little. Well, a good portion.
So in terms of government involvement, how do you assess how Wacomico County has done this, but also the city of Salisbury? I know Jake Day, the mayor, has emphasized the idea of trying to deal with homelessness, particularly for veterans. What are you seeing?
I think they're making a great effort to do what they can to keep people safe. Certainly, connecting with Halo and the other agencies, the other organizations out there. It just takes a village is what it takes, and I think Jake is doing everything he feels is necessary to do for the homeless population. And
I guess they have this project, these tiny houses. Do you think that'll help out somewhat, or what do you think?
I don't know how to go with the tiny houses. I don't know all the ins and outs of what they're doing with that. I know that sometimes there's a lot of guidance needed when you work with the homeless population, because the decision-making process isn't always the best, and that's why they're homeless in a lot of cases. But hopefully they'll be able to get these things put together at some point in the near future. They run into a lot of problems with, just like we did when we did our build, and it just takes a little while to get the process through, but they'll get there.
So, one of the things that I think there was some that are being built, I think, up in Delaware, I think, at one point, and in talking to the people behind that one, they were talking about not only, obviously, having the physical structure, but they also talked about having, medical assistance and to get right guidance in terms of jobs and learning and that kind of thing. It seems as if those little houses need to have, like, a full service kind of operation.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's what I'm saying. I don't know what all they have planned for that, but that's what the type of thing we do at Halo. We have a full service, and that's really what they're going to need there. And I'm sure that they've done their homework on it.
So a lot of these government programs are going to expire. Do you see us then seeing an ever increasing number of people who are homeless at this point? What sense do you get? What kind of feedback do you get from the people that you're talking to?
Yeah, I feel that as the programs expire, it's going to be even busier than what we have right now. And again, a 22% increase in a short period of time. We're trying to prepare for this, but a couple expansions with the men's shelter, and we'll just do whatever it takes, I think, to make it happen.
So, and one of the things, too, is that I think you indicated that, what I've read, is that you have a large number of families, I guess, that you have. What is the difficulty in trying to handle families and to get them on their feet, and are there special needs? Obviously, there are children often involved and fairly young, as you indicate. How do you deal with that? Particularly, I don't know, how many families do you have in the...
I know we have 19 children. I think we have maybe 9 families.
9 families.
That's about all we can carry. Actually,
right. So that's a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
How do you like get everything so they don't bump into one another socially?
Yeah. Well, thank the Lord we have a pretty sizable building. So the big thing for me is just ensuring that we're helping them getting the services that they need. Obviously we work with the Board of Education, and so any children that are in school, they're really only out for maybe a 2-day period, if that. It's a matter of a phone call, and we work very closely with the Board of Ed to get the buses coming in to pick the kids up to get them into school. We have the case managers on duty to help with the housing situation that, let's get this rolling, connecting. And I can tell you in the women's shelter, it's crazy when you have that many kids. We've had as high as 26 children, and it's been a unique experience. But you can't help it. If the people, or, your listeners go on the Facebook page for Hope and Life Outreach, They have, I posted the pictures of the kids decorating the Christmas tree. So we have events for them. They watched Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Frosty, the basic things that we have. We have an area set up for the little children to be able to play in, just so that the moms can rest, a little bit. We've got young moms in there with babies, and it's kind of, they've got to have a break. If we see problems happening, say, the depression piece coming in or something, it's an immediate connecting them to counseling, getting them plugged in and that sort of thing. If we have moms that are pregnant that haven't made any moves, and we make the necessary moves to help them get, connected to make sure they're safe.
What is it like for, say, a child who goes to school, who's homeless, whose main residence at the moment is your shelter, in a school? I mean, do other children know? I mean, children can be certainly cruel, but I mean, what awareness do they have about their status?
Well, obviously the teachers and the principals and that know. I'm not sure that a lot of the children know. I can tell you we try to work with the board to have the school buses come in empty, or they be the last child to get off, so that, you live in a homeless shelter, that type deal. We try to, make it so they're not stigmatized, I guess is the best way to put it,
And we mentioned a moment ago that this is Christmas time, and it can be a bit depressing because there are all these ads, and there's the Christmas lights, and it's usually, for a lot of families, this is a moment to get together, that kind of thing. But for somebody who's homeless and perhaps doesn't have that connection, what is that like? I mean, is there a holiday depression, do you think, that sets in?
Yeah, Christmas time is probably one of the most difficult periods of time from the standpoint of working with the guests, because they are in that depressed mood. They don't have a home to do. That's why we try really hard to make it as much of a home atmosphere during this period of time as we can. And the other part is trying to get our people connected with their families. Hey, these are strides they've made. Let's connect just a little bit, and it has worked some to be able to get them connected with their families, but some are connected, some just aren't going to be with anybody. So when they're not with anybody, we just love on them. So,
are there presents and all that?
Yes,
okay.
The community steps up. We have the families, and they, call in and say, "Hey, I'd like to adopt a family." So they get their presents, and it's under the tree that morning. When they get up, they get to go to the tree, and they get to find their presents, and they get to open it. So try to make it as close to quote-unquote home as you can possibly get, because it's a very hard period of time. From Thanksgiving forward, we're working nonstop from just the mental health piece of it for all, not just those that suffer with it, but those that are going through it.
Do any of the families, the relatives of these people, do they ever take them in for a short time, or what is that relationship like?
I'm going to say throughout the year, sometimes they burn the bridges. We find that the doors open a little bit at Christmas time and Thanksgiving. A lot of times, some of the people are in such a way that they can't stay, because the guidelines say you can't have anybody in there staying. So they may get to go for Thanksgiving dinner, or they may get to go for Christmas for the day or something. But we do try to make that connection there if at all possible.
So looking ahead at the future, finally, what do you see? I mean, you've seen this jump over the last 10 months, I guess it is. Do you think that we're going to see the further increase as we go into next year? I mean, despite all the great jobs numbers that we see and so on, I mean, what kind of prospect do you think? And I do
feel it's going to increase.
Yeah.
I think, like again, I said, we're preparing for that increase. I don't know what kind of a jump it'll be, but we want to be ready. I think one of the things that Halo is looking forward to is, hopefully opening a facility for the mental health, those that are homeless and have mental health. That's one of our goals that we're moving towards, and with that, that takes on a whole new chapter. So.
Well, we've been speaking with Celeste Savage. She is CEO and Executive Director, also founder of Hope and Life Outreach Ministries here in Salisbury. We appreciate you stopping by and chatting with us.
Thank you, Don. It was great being here.
This has been Delmarva Today. I'm Don Rush. Thanks for listening.
Delmarva Today with Don Rush.